I've heard that life is what you make it. I say make room to grow. I'm your host, LaWanda Dockery, and this is the Make Room to Grow podcast. It all started with a dream about growing food, and who would ever imagine that growing food would lead to me learning about personal growth and development? Well, it did, and I want to bring you along for this beautiful ride. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, Grow Nation. I hope you all are well, and I hope it's warm enough in your area for you to get your hands dirty in the garden this weekend. So you've all had a chance to meet Doc. Isn't he great, y'all? You know where we are in terms of our gardening, that we're cleaning up and that we're getting ready and thinking about what we're going to do for next year. But we often don't talk about the other side of gardening. You have all these things that you're trying to grow, you're doing all these experiments, but what happens with the actual harvest? And it reminds me of a scripture where Jesus talks about the harvest being plentiful, but the laborers being few. And if you need an actual reference for that, I will give you Luke 10:2. I'm coming from the NLT version. These were his instructions to them. The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest. Ask him to send more workers into his fields. Now I know this is not exactly talking about me and my little garden, but I thought it was relevant because, you can be given something or you can work at something, but what if you don't put in a work ethic to maintain it or to take it to the next level or to keep the ground that God has given you? And believe me, even in mentioning this to you, this holds me more accountable because in a very simplified example, we've been harvesting dozens and dozens, over 100 cayenne peppers. We kept picking them and they were going bad because we did not have enough people to give them to, or we just would let them sit and not do anything with them. I cook with a few, but that still wasn't enough to deplete the harvest. So I decided this week that I am going to make batches of crushed red pepper. We're having technical difficulties with our oven, so I've had to put them in the air fryer. Doesn't seem like a big deal at all, but I have to make sure that I'm making the time to wash them off, cut the ends off, put them in the air fryer, keep resetting them. But if I don't even take the time out to do that, these peppers would sit there and go bad. And that's a shame. What do we have in our lives that we may have started, but we haven't properly finished, or we haven't allocated the sweat equity or the resources, or made up our minds that we're just going to roll up our sleeves and work hard to maintain something that God has given us? And I think we can look at our lives like that. I'll give another example. We're in the middle of a renovation in our home. First one that we're doing as a couple. And for me, being a student of how to be a good steward of the resources that God has gifted us with or entrusted us with to manage, I want to know, God, how do we properly manage this? How do we properly preserve this? How do we properly keep this moving forward? And a lot of times, maybe you have to come up with a system. Maybe you have to come up with a plan. But I believe that God honors all of this, that he wants us to be productive, but he also wants us to manage these things well. So yes, you may have something that you're growing. You may have something that you're working on. You may have a project, an idea, a vision. You may be in the midst of something where you're like, wow, God finally did this thing for me. And this is surplus. But with the surplus, you are accountable for how you use it. So I just wanted to leave you with that. And guys, as always, you already know, I want you to be intentional about those areas in your life where you are going to make room to grow.